The Brothers and the Circle of Seven. By Clifton Andrew Mather. Copyright 2020. Chapter 1. Weeks of Restoration. The kingdom had been reclaimed, but victory did not bring rest. For 3 long weeks, Aldrich and Rowan walked the length and breadth of their capital, not as distant rulers perched on thrones, but as brothers among their people. The city still bore the wounds of tyranny: shattered stone, burned homes, empty marketplaces. Yet everywhere they went, hope rose like a slow but steady sunrise. Aldrich stood atop the eastern wall at dawn, the wind tugging at his cloak. Below him, workers hauled stone, soldiers drilled in formation, and families returned to homes they thought they'd lost forever. Rowan joined him quietly, brushing dust from his sleeves. "You're up before the sun again," Rowan said, leaning on the battlement. Aldrich didn't look away from the horizon. "A king should greet the day before his people do." Rowan smirked. "You always did like carrying the heavier burden, and you always tried to take half of it," Aldrich replied, finally turning to him. "Some things never change." Rowan's smile softened. "Some things shouldn't." Below them, the 5 companions moved through the city like pillars of strength. Caelan oversaw the rebuilding of the walls, his voice calm but firm as he directed the placement of stone. Dorian stood beside him, analyzing angles and muttering corrections under his breath. Garrick hauled beams twice the weight of any other man, offering quiet encouragement to the workers. Finian darted between groups, delivering messages, teasing soldiers, and somehow lifting spirits wherever he went. Brennar inspected the rebuilt watchtowers, his eyes sharp and thoughtful, always searching for weaknesses. Rowan watched them with quiet pride. "They've become part of us, Aldrich. I don't think I could imagine this kingdom without them." Aldrich nodded. "Nor could I. The 7 were meant to stand together." As if summoned by their words, Caelan climbed the steps to the wall. He bowed his head respectfully. "My kings," he said, "the western gate is secure. The people have returned to their homes." "Good," Aldrich replied. "And the food stores?" "Replenished," Caelan said. Garrick oversaw the distribution himself. "No one goes hungry under your rule." Rowan leaned on the stone. "And Finian? Where has he run off to this time?" Caelan's lips twitched, the closest he ever came to a smile. "He's convincing the children that he once outran a charging boar. They seem to believe him." Rowan laughed. "Of course they do." Aldrich exhaled slowly, letting the wind carry away the weight on his shoulders. "We've rebuilt walls, restored order, and replaced every corrupt official. But the kingdom is still healing." "And it will," Rowan said, "because we're here, together." Aldrich placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "Together," he echoed. Below them, Finian called up, "Kings! Are you two planning to stand up there all day looking dramatic, or will you come help us lift this beam before Garrick decides to do it alone?" Garrick's deep voice followed. "I can lift it alone." "You shouldn't," Finian shouted back. Rowan grinned. "We should go before Finian hurts himself trying to keep up." Aldrich nodded. "Lead the way, brother." They descended the steps and joined their companions. The 7 men worked side by side, kings and warriors, brothers and friends, rebuilding not just stone and timber, but trust, unity, and the spirit of a kingdom reborn. Later that afternoon, the 7 gathered in the courtyard to inspect the new training grounds. Soldiers drilled in tight formations, their movements sharp and disciplined. The sight stirred something deep in Aldrich. "We'll need more," he murmured. Rowan glanced at him. "More soldiers?" "More everything," Aldrich said. "If we are to protect this kingdom, and the world beyond, we must be stronger than ever." Rowan nodded slowly. "Then we'll build it. Together." Finian overheard and sauntered over. "If you two start saying together any more today, I might start crying." Garrick chuckled. "Let him. It would be the first time." Brennar folded his arms. "The kings speak truth. The world is not yet safe," Dorian added, "and we are not yet finished." Aldrich looked at each of them, Caelan's steady strength, Dorian's sharp mind, Garrick's quiet power, Finian's restless energy, Brenna's calm vigilance, and felt a surge of gratitude. "You five," Aldrich said, "are more than companions, you are brothers." Rowan nodded. "The circle of 7 stands unbroken." The 5 bowed their heads, not out of duty, but out of respect. As the sun dipped behind the western hills, the kings stood shoulder to shoulder, watching their people rebuild their lives. The circle of 7 moved around them like a living shield, loyal, strong, unbreakable. Peace had returned, but destiny was only beginning. Chapter 2. Brothers and their 5. The morning mist clung to the training grounds as Aldrich and Rowan walked side by side, their boots crunching softly over the gravel. The sun had barely risen, but the 5 companions were already awake, already working, already proving why they had become the closest men the kings had ever known. Kalen was drilling a group of young soldiers, his voice steady and controlled. Dorian stood nearby, arms crossed, correcting stances with sharp, precise gestures. Garrick practiced with a weighted hammer, each swing sending a deep thud through the earth. Finian lounged on a fence post, tossing a dagger into the air and catching it lazily. Brenna sat sharpening his spear, eyes scanning the horizon even as he worked. Rowan smiled. "Look at them, they're becoming the backbone of this kingdom." Aldrich nodded. "They already are." As the kings approached, the 5 men straightened, each bowing his head in respect, not out of obligation, but out of genuine loyalty. Kalen spoke first. "My kings." The soldiers improve quickly. They're eager to serve under righteous rule. Dorian added. "Eager, yes. Skilled? That's another matter. But they'll get there." Finian flicked his dagger into the air again. "If they don't, Garrick will scare them into shape." Garrick snorted. "I don't scare anyone." "You scare me," Finian said. "You scare yourself," Brennar murmured, without looking up. Rowan laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "It's good to hear your voices. The kingdom feels alive again." Aldrich stepped forward. "We've rebuilt walls and restored order. Now we rebuild trust, and that begins with us." Oath. "And to us, in your shadow." "You're not in our shadow," Rowan said firmly. "You stand with us." The 5 exchanged glances. Humbled, honored. Aldrich continued. "We want to know you better, not just as warriors, but as brothers." "Not just as warriors, but as brothers." "Tragic and heroic past," Dorian rolled his eyes. "Your past is neither tragic nor heroic." "It's heroic to me," Finian said. Garrick chuckled. "Everything is heroic to you." Rowan gestured for them to walk. "Come, let's take a moment away from the noise." They moved toward the quiet grove behind the training grounds, a place where the wind rustled through tall oaks and the world felt still. The 7 men sat in a loose circle, the kings at the center, the companions around them like the points of a star. Aldrich began. "We know your loyalty, we know your strength, but we want to know your stories." Kalen bowed his head. "Then I will begin." He spoke of serving Aldrich's father, of watching the kingdom fall into corruption, of vowing to protect the rightful heirs even if it cost him his life. His voice was steady, but Rowan saw the pain behind it. Dorian followed, revealing how he once studied under a corrupt general, and how that failure drove him to seek redemption through strategy and service. Garrick shared the story of his village, burned to ash by tyrants. Rowan had saved him years ago, pulling him from the rubble. Garrick's voice trembled as he spoke, but his eyes were steady. Finian leaned back, tossing a pebble. "I was a thief," he said simply, "a good one, a fast one. But Rowan caught me stealing bread from a merchant. Instead of punishing me, he gave me a meal and a chance. I've been following him ever since." Rowan shook his head. "You weren't stealing for yourself. You were feeding children." Finian shrugged. "Doesn't matter. You saw something in me I didn't." Brennar spoke last. My father was a wanderer. He taught me to read the land, to trust my instincts. He died exploring ruins far from here. When I found that hidden wall weeks ago, it felt like he was guiding me." The grove fell silent. Aldrich looked at each of them, his voice low and sincere. "You 5 are not just warriors. You are the heart of this kingdom," Rowan added. "And you are our brothers." Finian sniffed dramatically. "If anyone cries, I'm blaming Garrick." Garrick shook his head. "You're the only one crying." "I'm not crying," Finian insisted. "My eyes are sweating." Brennar smirked. "Of course they are." The laughter that followed was warm, genuine, the kind that only comes from men who trust one another completely. Aldrich stood. "Come, there is still much to do, but today we begin not as kings and soldiers, but as 7 brothers." Rowan placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "The circle of 7. The 5 companions rose, forming a line beside the kings. 7 men, 7 hearts, 7 destinies intertwined. As they walked back toward the city, Rowan glanced at Aldrich. "We're ready," he said. Aldrich nodded. "For whatever comes." And together, the 7 stepped forward, into a future they would shape with their own hands. Chapter 3. The Day of Crowns. The bells of the capital rang before sunrise, their deep tones rolling across the rooftops like waves of bronze. Today was not a day of rebuilding, nor a day of war. Today was a day the kingdom had waited for, the crowning of its rightful rulers. Aldrich stood in the quiet of his chamber, fastening the clasp of his ceremonial cloak. The fabric was deep blue, trimmed with silver thread that shimmered in the morning light. Rowan entered without knocking, already dressed in matching colors. "You look like a king," Rowan said with a grin. Aldrich raised an eyebrow. "And you look like someone who's about to trip on his own cloak." Rowan flicked the edge of his cloak. "I'll have you know I practiced walking in this thing," Aldrich smirked. "Did you practice not falling down the stairs?" Rowan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Are you nervous?" Aldrich hesitated. "Not for myself, for what this day means." Rowan nodded. "Then we face it together." Aldrich placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "Always." A knock sounded at the door. Kalen entered, bowing his head. "My kings, the others are ready." Behind him stood Dorian, Garrick, Finian and Brennar, each dressed in formal armor polished to a mirror shine. They looked like the pillars of a new age. Finian whistled. "Well, look at you two. If the crowns don't fit, it won't be for lack of trying." Garrick elbowed him gently. "Show respect." "I am," Finian said. "I'm respecting how handsome they look." Brennar shook his head. "You talk too much, and you talk too little," Finian replied. Aldrich stepped forward. "Brothers, thank you for standing with us today," Kalen bowed. "We stand with you every day," Dorian added, "and we will continue to do so, until the world is free." Rowan smiled. "Then let's give the kingdom a moment it will never forget." The walk to the Great Hall. The 7 walked through the palace corridors, their footsteps echoing like a steady drumbeat. Servants paused and bowed, soldiers saluted. Children peeked from behind pillars, whispering excitedly. When they reached the grand doors of the Great Hall, the sound of thousands of voices swelled from within. Citizens, soldiers, elders, families, all gathered to witness history. Aldrich inhaled deeply. "Ready?" Rowan nodded. "With you?" "Always." The doors opened. Light flooded in, warm and golden. The hall was filled to the walls, banners of blue and silver hanging from the rafters. The people erupted into cheers as the 7 entered. "Long live the brothers! Long live the kings! The circle of 7!" Aldrich and Rowan walked side by side down the central aisle, their 5 companions forming a protective line behind them. The air felt electric, charged with hope. At the front of the hall stood the high priest, holding 2 crowns, one of silver, one of iron and silver intertwined. The priest raised his voice. "Aldrich, son of the rightful line, step forward." Aldrich did. The priest placed the silver-woven crown upon his head. I crown you, Aldrich, supreme king of the kingdom of righteousness." The hall thundered with applause. Then the priest turned to Rowan. "Rowan, brother of the king, protector of the people, step forward." Rowan stepped up, heart pounding. "I crown you, Rowan, king brother of the kingdom of righteousness, equal in honor, equal in destiny." The second crown settled onto Rowan's brow. The hall erupted again, louder, deeper, filled with joy. Aldrich turned to Rowan, their crowns gleaming in the light. "Brother," he said softly, "we rule together." Rowan smiled, "As we always have. The oath of the seven." The priest raised his hands. "Let the circle of seven step forward." Caelan, Dorian, Garrick, Finian, and Brennar approached the dais, kneeling before the two kings. Aldrich spoke first. "You five have stood with us in darkness and in dawn. You have fought, bled, and rebuilt this kingdom with your own hands." Rowan continued. "We ask not for your obedience, but for your brotherhood. Stand with us, as equals in purpose, as guardians of this realm." Caelan bowed his head. "We swear it." Dorian placed a hand over his heart. "Until our last breath," Garrick's voice rumbled, "we stand with the kings." Finian grinned. "And we'll make sure they don't do anything foolish." Brennar nodded. "The seven are one." Aldrich extended his hand. "Rise, brothers." The five rose, forming a circle around the two kings, a circle unbroken, unbreakable. The crowd chanted, "The seven! The seven! The seven!" The moment after, when the ceremony ended, the seven stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the Capitol. The people below cheered, waving banners and raising their voices in celebration. Rowan leaned on the railing. "Do you hear that?" Aldrich nodded. "Hope," Finian added, "and maybe a little fear. They know we're going to make them work hard." Garrick chuckled. "You're the one who needs to work harder." Dorian smirked. "He's right." Caelan looked out over the city. "This is a new beginning," Brennar murmured, "and a heavy responsibility." Aldrich placed a hand on Rowan's shoulder. "But we carry it together." Rowan nodded. "Always." The seven stood shoulder to shoulder, looking out over the kingdom they had reclaimed, and the world they would soon set free. The Day of Crowns had ended, but their true journey had only begun. Chapter 4. Rings for the Ones We Love. The morning after the Day of Crowns dawned warm and bright, as if the kingdom itself wished to bless the new reign. The capital buzzed with celebration, but Aldrich and Rowan had chosen a quieter path for the day, a journey beyond the palace walls, beyond the city, to the people who had shaped Rowan's heart long before he ever dreamed of wearing a crown. The seven rode together, their horses kicking up soft trails of dust as they left the capital behind. The countryside stretched before them in rolling green hills dotted with farms and small cottages. Birds sang overhead. The air smelled of earth and spring. Finian rode up beside Rowan. "So, King Brother, nervous?" Rowan raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "Seeing your family again," Finian said. "You're a king now. They might bow, they might faint, they might—" Garrick cut him off. "They'll embrace him. That's what families do." Finian shrugged. "Mine didn't." Rowan gave him a gentle look. "You have a family now." Finian smirked. "I know. That's why I'm still here." Aldrich rode ahead, listening quietly. Caelan and Brennar flanked him, ever watchful. Dorian studied the landscape, as if memorizing every path and vantage point. After several hours, the seven crested a hill overlooking a small village nestled in a valley. Smoke curled from chimneys. Children played in the fields. Rowan's breath caught. "Home," he whispered. Aldrich smiled. "Let's go see them, Rowan's family." The village erupted in joy as the seven rode in. People rushed from their homes, cheering, waving, calling Rowan's name. Rowan dismounted quickly, overwhelmed by the warmth of it all. His mother reached him first, tears streaming down her face as she threw her arms around him. "My son," she whispered. "My brave boy." Rowan held her tightly. "I'm home, Mother." His father approached next, standing tall despite the emotion in his eyes. "You've done us proud, Rowan." Rowan embraced him. I couldn't have done anything without Aldrich. Aldrich stepped forward, bowing his head respectfully. Your son saved me more times than I can count. Rowan's father clasped Aldrich's forearm. Then you are a son to us as well. Rowan's sister ran to him, followed by her 2 young sons who clung to Rowan's legs, laughing. The 7 watched with quiet smiles. Even Caelan's stern expression softened. Finian whispered to Garrick, If he cries, I'm pretending I didn't see it. You'll cry first, Garrick replied. The giving of the rings. When the greetings settled, Rowan gathered his family in the center of the village square. Aldrich stood beside him, holding a small wooden box carved with the royal crest. Rowan opened it, revealing 6 rings, each crafted of fine metal, each bearing the symbol of the new kingdom. These rings, Rowan said, voice steady, are royal. They mark you as part of the bloodline of the kings. They are a symbol of honor, of unity, and of the love we share. Aldrich added, But know this, they are not equal to the 2 silver rings worn by Rowan and me. Those 2 are sacred, bound to the throne itself. These rings are gifts of the heart. Rowan placed the first ring on his father's hand. You taught me strength. He placed the second on his mother's hand. You taught me compassion. The third went to his sister. You taught me courage. The 4th and 5th he knelt to give to his nephews. You taught me joy. The 6th ring he held for a moment, then looked toward a girl standing at the edge of the crowd, a young woman with kind eyes and a quiet presence. She stepped forward hesitantly. Rowan spoke softly. This ring is for you, not because of a promise made today, but because of a future I believe in. She accepted it with trembling hands, bowing her head. I will honor it, my king. Finian leaned toward Brennar. Well, that was subtle. Brennar elbowed him. Quiet, a moment between brothers. As the village celebrated, Aldrich and Rowan stepped aside, watching the people dance and laugh. Aldrich spoke quietly. You've given them more than rings, Rowan. You've given them hope. Rowan looked at him. And you've given me a kingdom. Aldrich shook his head. We gave it to each other. Rowan smiled. As we always have. The 2 kings clasped forearms, their silver rings catching the sunlight. The 7 among the people. The 5 companions mingled with the villagers. Garrick helped repair a broken fence, lifting beams with ease. Caelan inspected the village defenses, offering advice with gentle authority. Dorian sat with the elders, discussing strategy and history. Brennar taught the children how to hold a spear safely. Finian performed tricks with his dagger, earning cheers and laughter. Rowan watched them with pride. They fit anywhere, don't they? Aldrich nodded. Because they follow their hearts, and because they follow us. The departure. As the sun dipped low, the 7 prepared to leave. Rowan embraced his family once more, promising to return. His mother cupped his face. Be safe, my son. Rowan smiled. I have 6 brothers watching over me, Aldrich added, and he watches over me. The 7 mounted their horses and rode out of the village, the cheers of the people fading behind them. Rowan looked back once, then forward. Aldrich asked, Ready for what comes next? Rowan nodded. Always. The 7 rode on. Toward destiny, toward danger, toward the world they would soon set free. Chapter 5. The 7 Depart. The morning of departure arrived with a sky washed in pale gold. The capital was awake long before dawn, soldiers lining the courtyard in disciplined rows, citizens gathering along the walls to watch their kings ride out. Word had spread quickly. The 7 were leaving to free the oppressed lands beyond the kingdom's borders. Aldrich stood in the palace armory, fastening the straps of his armor. The silver ring on his hand glinted as he tightened the final buckle. Rowan entered behind him, adjusting his cloak. You're quiet today, Rowan said. Aldrich nodded. Today marks the beginning of something greater than us. Rowan stepped beside him. Then we face it together. Aldrich looked at him, eyes steady. Always. They left the armory, and walked into the courtyard where the 5 companions waited, each mounted and ready. Kaelin sat tall on his horse, armor polished, expression calm. Dorian checked the straps on his saddle, muttering calculations under his breath. Garrick held the reins of a massive warhorse, the animal almost as broad as he was. Finian twirled a dagger between his fingers, grinning at the crowd. Brennar scanned the rooftops, ever watchful. When the kings approached, the 5 straightened. Kaelin bowed his head. "My kings, the knights are assembled." Aldrich surveyed the 50 elite knights behind them. The best the kingdom had to offer. Their armor gleamed, their banners fluttered, their faces were resolute. Rowan exhaled. "They're ready." Finian leaned toward Garrick. "I'm ready too. I even polished my boots." Garrick snorted. "You polished one boot." "I got tired," Finian replied. Brennar shook his head. "You get tired walking across a room." Dorian didn't look up. "Focus. We're riding into danger," Finian grinned. "Danger loves me." "Danger tolerates you," Garrick corrected. Rowan laughed softly. "Brothers, let's not keep the world waiting. The farewell." The palace gates opened, and the 7 rode forward. The crowd erupted into cheers. "Long live the kings! Long live the 7! Bring freedom to the world!" Children waved small banners. Elders bowed deeply. Soldiers saluted with fists over their hearts. Aldrich raised his hand. "People of the kingdom, today we ride not for conquest but for justice. We ride to free those who cannot free themselves," Rowan added. "And we will return. Stronger, united, victorious." The crowd roared. As they passed through the gates, Rowan glanced back at the capital. The walls they rebuilt, the people they saved, the home they had restored. Aldrich rode beside him. "Second thoughts?" Rowan shook his head. "None." "This is what we were meant to do." Aldrich smiled. "Good, because I need you." Rowan smirked. "You always have." On the road. The 7 rode at the front of the column, the 50 knights following in perfect formation. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of dust and promise. Kaelin broke the silence first. "Our first destination is Harrowfall. Reports say the city is under brutal rule." Dorian nodded. "We'll need to approach from the north. The southern gate is heavily fortified." Finian groaned. "Can't we approach from the south just once? I'm tired of climbing cliffs." Garrick chuckled. "You're tired of everything." Brennar pointed ahead. "Quiet. There's movement on the ridge." The 7 slowed. A small group of farmers approached, carrying baskets of bread and fruit. Rowan dismounted. "What brings you here?" An older woman stepped forward. "We heard the kings were riding out. We wanted to give you this, for strength." Aldrich accepted the basket with a bow. "Your kindness strengthens us more than food." The woman smiled. "Then free the world, my kings." Rowan's voice softened. "We will." As they rode on, Finian whispered, "If we keep getting gifts like that, I might actually gain weight." Garrick shook his head. "You'd need to eat more than a berry to gain weight." Finian gasped. "Are you calling me skinny?" "I'm calling you small," Garrick replied. Rowan laughed. "Brothers, please. We haven't even reached the first battle, the night before Harrowfall." They made camp near a quiet stream. The knights set up tents while the 7 gathered around a fire. Aldrich stared into the flames. "Tomorrow we face our first true test." Kaelin nodded. "The enemy is strong, but we are stronger," Dorian added. "If we strike at dawn, we can catch them off guard." Garrick cracked his knuckles. "I'm ready." Finian leaned back on his elbows. "I was born ready." Brennar poked the fire. "Stay sharp. Dawn comes quickly." Rowan looked around the circle, at the men who had become his brothers. "We ride as 7, he said. "We fight as 7. We return as 7. Aldrich placed his hand in the center of the circle. The circle of 7. One by one, the others placed their hands atop his. Kaelin, Dorian, Garrick, Finian, Brennar, Rowan. 7 hands, 7 hearts, 7 destinies intertwined. Aldrich spoke softly. "Tomorrow, we begin freeing the world." Rowan nodded. "And we do it together." The fire crackled. The stars watched silently. and the 7 prepared for the dawn. Chapter 6. Blood on the Stones of Harrowfall. The city of Harrowfall rose in the distance like a wounded beast, its walls cracked, its towers blackened by fire, its gates chained shut. Smoke drifted from within, carrying the faint cries of a people held under brutal rule. Aldrich reined in his horse at the crest of a ridge overlooking the city. Rowan pulled up beside him, eyes narrowing. "It's worse than the reports," Rowan said quietly. Aldrich nodded. "Then we free them quickly." Behind them, the 50 elite knights formed a disciplined line. The 5 companions rode forward to join the kings. Kaelin studied the walls. "The enemy has doubled their guard. They expect resistance." Dorian's eyes scanned the battlements. "Archers on the towers, patrols at the gate. We'll need to strike fast." Garrick cracked his knuckles. "Fast is fine." Finian twirled a dagger. "As long as we don't die fast." Brennar pointed toward a narrow path along the outer wall. "There, a blind spot. We can breach from the side." Aldrich nodded. "Then that's our entry." Rowan drew his sword, the steel catching the morning light. "Brothers, today we free Harrowfall." The 7 rode down the ridge, the knights following like a wave of steel. The breach. The side path was narrow, overgrown, and half hidden by rubble. Perfect for a surprise attack. Kaelin led the charge, shield raised. Garrick smashed through the weakened stone with a single blow of his hammer. The wall cracked, then crumbled, opening a gap just wide enough for the 7 and the knights to slip through. The enemy guards shouted in alarm. Aldrich raised his sword. "For the kingdom!" Rowan echoed. "For the people!" The 7 surged forward. Steel clashed. Shields splintered. The air filled with the roar of battle. Kaelin fought like a fortress, blocking blows meant for Aldrich. Dorian moved with precision, striking only when necessary. Garrick broke enemy lines with sheer force, sending men flying. Finian darted between foes quick as a shadow. Brennar held the rear, spear flashing like lightning. Aldrich and Rowan fought side by side, their movements perfectly in sync. 2 kings, 2 brothers, one unstoppable force. But the enemy was more numerous than expected. The turning point. The knights pushed deeper into the city, freeing prisoners and driving back the oppressors. But for every enemy they cut down, 2 more seemed to appear. Rowan wiped blood from his brow. "They're endless!" Aldrich blocked a strike aimed at Rowan's back. "Then we end them!" Kaelin shouted. "Kings! More coming from the east!" Dorian cursed under his breath. "They're trying to surround us!" Finian stabbed an attacker and kicked him aside. "Well, that's rude." Garrick swung his hammer, clearing space. "We hold the line!" Brennar's voice cut through the chaos. "Behind us!" The 7 turned. Too late. A wave of enemy soldiers crashed into the knights from the rear. The formation broke. The knights fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 5 to 1. Aldrich's heart clenched. "Hold the line! Protect the wounded!" Rowan shouted. "Stay together!" But the enemy pressed harder. 1 knight fell, then another, then another. The 7 fought desperately, but the tide was turning. The loss. By the time the sun dipped behind the western tower, the battle was won, but the cost was devastating. 48 knights lay dead on the blood-stained stones of Harrowfall. Only 2 survived, both gravely wounded. Rowan knelt beside one, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "You fought with honor. We will not forget," the knight whispered. We followed you willingly, my king." Rowan's voice broke. "Rest now. You're safe." Aldrich stood over the fallen, jaw clenched, eyes burning with grief. "This is my failure." Kaelin placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, my king. This is the price of justice." Dorian knelt beside the bodies, head bowed. "I should have predicted their numbers." Finian wiped his eyes quickly. "Don't start blaming yourselves. They died freeing the innocent. There's no greater end." Garrick's voice trembled. "We should have saved more." Brennar looked at the 2 surviving knights. "We save who we can, and we honor the rest." Aldrich knelt beside Rowan. "Brother, we leave the wounded in good care. They deserve peace." Rowan nodded slowly. "And we carry their memory with us." The 7 stood in silence, surrounded by the fallen, a circle of grief, a circle of resolve. The departure from Harrowfall. The people of the city emerged from hiding, gathering around the seven with tears and gratitude. "You saved us," an old man said, bowing deeply. A young woman whispered, "We thought no one would come." A child clung to Rowan's leg. "Thank you, King." Rowan lifted the child gently. "You're safe now." Aldrich addressed the crowd. "Your city is free. Stand strong. Rebuild. We will return." The people cheered weakly, still shaken but filled with hope. The seven mounted their horses. The two wounded knights were left in the care of Harrowfall's healers, surrounded by grateful citizens. As they rode out of the city, Rowan looked back at the blood-stained stones. "We can't let this happen again," he whispered. Aldrich nodded. "Then we grow stronger?" Finian rode up beside them. "And we stay alive? Preferably all seven of us." Garrick added. "We will," Kaelin said. "We must." Brennar murmured. "The world is watching." Dorian looked ahead. "And the world needs us." The seven rode into the fading light, battered, grieving, but unbroken. The liberation of Harrowfall was complete, but the journey had only grown darker. Chapter 7. The Weight of Command. The road away from Harrowfall was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the heavy, suffocating quiet that follows tragedy. The seven rode slowly, their horses' hooves crunching over gravel and dried leaves. Behind them, the city they had freed stood in mourning, its people lighting lanterns for the fallen knights. Aldrich rode at the front, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the horizon. Rowan rode beside him, glancing at his brother every few moments, worry etched across his face. The five companions followed in a tight formation, each lost in his own thoughts. Finian, usually the first to break tension, said nothing. Garrick's hands gripped the reins so tightly his knuckles whitened. Dorian stared at the ground, replaying the battle in his mind. Kaelin watched Aldrich closely, sensing the storm building within him. Brennar scanned the trees, alert but subdued. The weight of 48 lost knights hung over them like a shadow, Aldrich's burden. They stopped at a clearing near a stream to rest the horses. The knight's absence was painfully obvious. The clearing felt too empty, too quiet. Aldrich dismounted and walked to the water's edge, staring at his reflection. Rowan approached slowly. "You haven't spoken since we left the city," Rowan said. Aldrich didn't look up. "There's nothing to say," Rowan stepped beside him. "There's everything to say," Aldrich's voice was low, strained. "I led them into that battle. I misjudged the enemy, and they died because of me." Rowan shook his head. "They died fighting for freedom. They died with honor." Aldrich's fists tightened. "Honor doesn't bring them back." Rowan placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "No. But their sacrifice will save thousands. You carry the burden because you're a king, but you don't carry it alone." Aldrich finally looked at him, eyes burning. "Then help me carry it." Rowan nodded. "Always." The companions speak. Behind them, the five companions gathered around the fire. Finian poked at the flames with a stick. "I hate this silence," Garrick sighed. "It's not silence. It's grief." Dorian rubbed his temples. "I should have seen the ambush coming. I should have—" Kaelin cut him off. "Enough. Blame won't bring them back," Brennar added quietly, "but learning from it might save others." Finian tossed the stick aside. I don't want to lose any of you." Garrick placed a massive hand on Finian's shoulder. "You won't," Finian sniffed. "You can't promise that." "No," Garrick said, "but I can promise I'll fight until my last breath to keep you alive." Finian looked away, blinking hard. "You big oaf." Kaelin stood. "We should speak with the kings." Dorian nodded. "They need us." The circle reforms. The five approached Aldrich and Rowan. Kaelin spoke first. "My kings, we share your grief, but you must not bear it alone." Aldrich turned to them. "I failed them." Dorian stepped forward. "Then we all failed. Because we are one," Garrick added. "We stand with you, in victory and in loss." Finian swallowed hard. "And we're not going anywhere," Brennar nodded. The world still needs us. Rowan looked at the 5 men, their loyalty, their pain, their strength, and felt something inside him steady. We lost brothers today, Rowan said, but we are still 7. Aldrich exhaled slowly. And we will honor the fallen by fighting smarter, stronger, together. Kaelin placed his hand in the center of the circle. Then let us renew our oath. One by one, the others placed their hands atop his. Dorian, Garrick, Finian, Brenna, Rowan, Aldrich, 7 hands, 7 hearts, 7 burdens shared. Aldrich spoke softly. We carry the weight of command. But we carry it as one, Rowan added, and we will not break. A new resolve. As the sun dipped behind the trees, the 7 mounted their horses once more. Aldrich's voice was steady again. We ride at dawn. Rowan nodded. To free the next city, Finian forced a smile, and hopefully not die doing it. Garrick chuckled. You won't, Dorian smirked. Not unless you trip over your own feet. Brenna murmured, Stay sharp. The world is watching. Kaelin looked at the kings. Lead us, and we will follow. Aldrich raised his chin. Then we ride. For the fallen, for the living, for the world. The 7 rode into the twilight, wounded, grieving, but stronger than ever. The weight of command was heavy, but the circle of 7 carried it together. Chapter 8. A Narrow Escape. Dawn broke cold and grey as the 7 rode through the forested foothills east of Harrowfall. Mist clung to the trees, muffling sound and turning the world into a shifting haze of silver and shadow. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. Aldrich rode at the front, Rowan beside him, the 5 companions close behind. No one spoke. The memory of Harrowfall still weighed heavily on their hearts, but the kings pressed forward, determined, resolute. Brennar suddenly slowed his horse, raising a hand. Stop! The 7 halted instantly. Rowan leaned toward him. What is it? Brennar's eyes narrowed. Tracks! Many of them! Kaelin dismounted, crouching beside Brennar. Soldiers? Boot prints, Brennar confirmed. Heavy ones, fresh. Dorian scanned the trees. How many? Brennar stood slowly. 100, maybe more, Finian groaned. 100? Why is it never 10? Garrick tightened his grip on his reins. Where are they headed? Brennar pointed north. Toward us. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Then we move. Now. The ambush. They had barely ridden a mile when the forest erupted with shouts. Form ranks, Kaelin barked. But it was too late. Enemy soldiers poured from the trees, dozens, then scores, then a full 100. They surrounded the 7 in a tightening ring of steel. Rowan drew his sword. They were waiting for us. Dorian cursed. They must have tracked us from Harrowfall. Finian twirled a dagger. Well, that's flattering. Garrick cracked his knuckles. We can take them. Aldrich shook his head. Not head on. Not this many. The enemy commander stepped forward, sneering. Kings of the West, you should have stayed in your palace. Rowan raised his sword. We don't hide behind walls. Then you'll die in the open, the commander said. Aldrich's voice was calm. We're not dying today. The commander laughed. You're surrounded. Aldrich glanced at Rowan. Rowan nodded. Then Aldrich said, No, you are the breakout. Kaelin slammed his shield into the nearest soldier, creating a gap. Garrick charged through it like a battering ram, scattering men like leaves. Finian darted behind him, blades flashing. Brennar covered the rear, spear striking with deadly precision. Dorian shouted directions, guiding them through the chaos. Left, now right, keep moving. Aldrich and Rowan fought side by side, carving a path through the enemy ranks. But the soldiers kept coming. Rowan blocked a strike aimed at Aldrich's back. They're trying to separate us! Aldrich parried another blow. Stay close. Finian leapt onto a fallen log, kicking an enemy in the face. I'm trying! Garrick grabbed Finian by the collar and yanked him back, just as a spear thrust past his ribs. Stay behind me! I was doing fine! Finian protested. You were about to die, Garrick replied. Details, Kaelin shouted. We need higher ground. Brennar pointed. There, The ridge! A narrow, rocky slope rose to their right, steep but climbable. Aldrich nodded. Go! The 7 fought their way toward the ridge, step by brutal step. The slope was treacherous. Covered in loose stone and tangled roots, the 7 scrambled upward, using hands and feet to climb. Arrows whistled past them, embedding in the earth. Rowan slipped on a patch of gravel. Aldrich! Aldrich grabbed his arm, pulling him up. I've got you! Finian scrambled behind them. If I fall, tell everyone I died heroically. You'll die loudly, Dorian muttered. Garrick shielded them from arrows, taking several hits to his armor. Keep moving! Cailan climbed last, blocking the path with his shield as enemy soldiers tried to follow. Brennar reached the top first and scanned the terrain. This way! The 7 crested the ridge and disappeared into the trees beyond. The chase. The enemy soldiers pursued relentlessly, crashing through the underbrush. Rowan panted. They're not giving up, Aldrich replied. Neither are we. Dorian pointed ahead. There's a ravine. If we cross it, we can lose them. Finian groaned. Ravine? Why is it always a ravine? Garrick grinned. Better than a cliff, not by much. They reached the ravine. A narrow gap with a fallen tree forming a natural bridge. Aldrich crossed first. Rowan followed. Brennar and Dorian moved quickly behind them. Finian hesitated. This looks unsafe. Garrick shoved him. Move. Finian stumbled across the log, arms flailing. I hate this. Cailan crossed last, then turned and kicked the log with all his strength. It cracked, then tumbled into the ravine below. The enemy soldiers skidded to a halt at the edge, shouting in frustration. The 7 stood on the far side, breathing hard. Rowan exhaled. That was close. Finian collapsed onto the ground. I'm never crossing a log again. Garrick smirked. You'll cross whatever we tell you to. Finian groaned. I know. Aldrich looked back at the ravine. We survived because we stayed together. Rowan nodded. As we always do. Cailan sheathed his sword. We should keep moving. They may find another way across. Brennar pointed east. There's a hidden path. Few know it. Dorian nodded. Then that's our route. Aldrich mounted his horse. Brothers, we escaped today, but the world will not stop hunting us. Rowan mounted beside him. Then let them come. The 7 rode into the forest, bruised, exhausted, but unbroken. They had survived 100 men, not by strength alone, but by brotherhood. Chapter 9. Brennar's Discovery. The forest grew denser as the 7 rode east, the trees rising like ancient pillars around them. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy in thin golden beams, illuminating drifting motes of dust. The air was cool, quiet, almost reverent, a stark contrast to the chaos they had escaped days before. Brennar rode slightly ahead of the group, his eyes scanning the terrain with the same calm focus he had carried since childhood. He had always been the watcher, the one who noticed what others overlooked. Rowan guided his horse beside Aldrich. He's been quiet all morning. Aldrich nodded. He senses something. Finian rode up behind them. I sense something too. Hunger. Garrick snorted. You're always hungry, because I'm always starving, Finian replied. Dorian didn't look up from the map he was studying. You ate an hour ago. Finian gasped. That was a snack. Cailan raised a hand. Quiet. Brennar's stopping. The 7 halted as Brennar dismounted and knelt beside a patch of moss-covered stone half buried beneath roots and soil. Rowan approached. What is it? Brennar brushed away the moss, revealing a faint carving, a symbol worn by time but unmistakable. Aldrich's breath caught. That crest! Dorian slid off his horse, eyes widening. It's ancient. Older than the kingdom. Cailan stepped closer. How did you see it? Brennar shrugged. I felt drawn to it, Finian whispered. Well, that's not ominous at all. The hidden wall. Brennar stood and walked deeper into the trees, moving with purpose. The others followed, exchanging glances but trusting him completely. After several minutes the forest opened into a clearing, and there it stood, A massive stone wall, half collapsed and swallowed by vines, stretching across the clearing like the remains of a forgotten fortress. The stones were enormous, carved with symbols none of them recognized. Rowan exhaled. How has no one found this? Aldrich stepped forward, running his hand along the stone. Because no one was meant to. Dorian traced the carvings with his fingers. This is older than any record we have. Centuries older. Garrick pushed aside a fallen tree, revealing more of the structure. It's not just a wall, it's a doorway. Finian's eyes widened. A doorway to what? Brennar approached the center of the wall, where a circular indentation sat carved into the stone, perfectly smooth, untouched by time. My father told me stories, Brennar said quietly. Stories of hidden places, lost places, places built by kings long before ours. Rowan stepped beside him. And you think this is one of them? Brennar nodded. I know it is. The opening. Aldrich examined the circular indentation. It looks like something fits here. Finian grinned. Maybe it's a giant key. Or a giant cookie. Garrick shook his head. Why would it be a cookie? Why wouldn't it be? Dorian ignored them. The shape. It's familiar. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. The rings? Rowan looked at him. Our rings. Kaelin nodded. The silver rings of the kings. The ones bound to the throne. Aldrich hesitated. You think the rings open this? Dorian stepped back. It makes sense. The rings are ancient, passed down through generations. They may be more than symbols. Rowan removed his ring slowly. Only one way to know. Aldrich did the same. The 7 gathered around the indentation. Rowan placed his ring inside. Nothing happened. Aldrich placed his beside it. The stone trembled. Finian jumped back. Nope. No thank you. Garrick grabbed his collar. Stay. The wall rumbled, dust falling from the vines. The circular indentation glowed faintly, then split down the middle as the stone door slowly slid open. A cold breath of air escaped from the darkness beyond. Rowan whispered, What is this place? Aldrich stepped forward. We're about to find out. The Chamber of Kings. The 7 entered cautiously, torches lit. The chamber inside was vast, carved from solid stone, its walls lined with ancient murals depicting battles, kings, and symbols long forgotten. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone chest sealed with iron bands. Finian whistled. That's either treasure or something that wants to kill us. Dorian examined the chest. The markings match the ones outside. This is a vault. Kaelin placed a hand on the lid. A vault meant to be opened by kings. Aldrich and Rowan stepped forward, placing their hands on the iron bands. The chest clicked. The lid opened. Inside lay gold, jewels, ancient weapons, scrolls, and artifacts of unimaginable value. Enough wealth to rebuild entire kingdoms. Rowan whispered. This could change everything. Aldrich nodded slowly. This is not treasure. This is a legacy. Brennar stepped forward, emotion in his eyes. My father searched for this his entire life. He believed it existed. And now, we've found it. Rowan placed a hand on Brennar's shoulder. He would be proud. Finian stared at the gold. I'm proud. And I didn't even do anything. Garrick chuckled. You did plenty. Dorian closed the chest gently. We must protect this. Use it wisely. Aldrich nodded. We will, for the world, Rowan added. And for the fallen. The 7 stood in the chamber, the torchlight flickering across their faces. They had found more than treasure. They had found purpose. And the world would never be the same. Chapter 10. Riches Beyond Imagination. The 7 rode in silence for hours after leaving the hidden vault, each man lost in his own thoughts. The forest around them felt different now, not just ancient, but sacred. As if the trees themselves knew what the 7 had uncovered. Aldrich led the way, the weight of the discovery pressing on him like a second crown. Rowan rode beside him, glancing at his brother every so often. You're quiet, Rowan said. Aldrich exhaled. We found enough wealth to rebuild the world, enough to change everything, and that responsibility, it's heavy. Rowan nodded. Then we carry it together. Aldrich smiled faintly. Always, behind them, the 5 companions rode in a loose formation. Finian broke the silence first. So, we're rich now. Should we buy a castle, or 7 castles? Or a castle shaped like a giant? Garrick cut him off. We're not buying anything. Finian sighed. I know, but let me dream. Dorian shook his head. This isn't wealth for us. It's wealth for the world, Kaelin added, and it must be used wisely, Brennar murmured, and protected. Rowan looked back at them. We'll decide together. As brothers, the Campfire Council, they made camp in a clearing beside a quiet stream. The night was cool, the stars bright above the treetops. The 7 sat around the fire, the chest of treasure resting between them, its presence almost unreal. Aldrich broke the silence. We need a plan. Rowan nodded. This treasure could rebuild cities, feed nations, arm the innocent, and restore hope to lands long forgotten. Kaelin leaned forward. We should divide it by purpose, a portion for rebuilding, a portion for supplies, a portion for the armies we'll need, Dorian added, and a portion to support the families of those who fall in battle. Garrick nodded solemnly. The knights who died at Harrowfall, their families should never suffer. Finian poked the fire with a stick. And maybe a portion for the children. Schools, food, clothes. They're the ones who suffer most. Brennar looked at the chest. And we must keep some hidden, for emergencies, for the future. Aldrich listened to each of them, pride swelling in his chest. You speak with wisdom. Rowan smiled. We're learning from the best. Finian pointed at Rowan. He means me, Garrick groaned. He does not. The decision. Aldrich stood, the firelight flickering across his armor. Brothers, this treasure is not ours. It belongs to the world, to the people who have suffered under tyranny. Rowan rose beside him. We will use it to rebuild every city we free, to feed every starving family, to arm every innocent village, to restore hope where hope has died. Kaelin placed a hand over his heart. Then we must protect it with our lives, Dorian nodded. And use it with care, Garrick's voice rumbled. And never for ourselves. Finian sighed dramatically. Not even a little, Brennar smirked. Not even a crumb. Finian threw his stick into the fire. Fine. Aldrich placed his hand on the chest. This treasure will be our greatest tool, but it will also make us targets, Rowan added. Then let them come. We are the 7, the 5 companions rose, forming a circle around the kings. Kaelin, we stand with you, Dorian, in every choice, Garrick, in every battle, Finian, in every stupid decision you make, Brennar, in every step of the journey. Rowan laughed softly. Thank you, Finian. Finian grinned, just keeping things honest. Aldrich looked at each of them. Then it's decided. We use this treasure to rebuild the world. Rowan placed his hand in the center of the circle. For the people, Aldrich placed his hand atop Rowan's. For the fallen, Kaelin added his. For justice, Dorian added his. For wisdom, Garrick added his. For strength, Finian added his. For fun, Brennar added his. For the future, 7 hands, 7 hearts, 7 vows. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night sky. The world had no idea what was coming, but the 7 did. And they were ready. Chapter 11. Homeward, with heavy hearts. The road back to the capital wound through rolling hills and quiet valleys, but the 7 rode in near silence. The treasure they carried was secured in reinforced chests strapped to 2 pack horses, but the true weight they bore was not gold. It was the memory of the 48 knights who had fallen at Harrowfall. Aldrich rode at the front, his posture straight but his eyes shadowed. Rowan stayed close beside him, watching his brother with quiet concern. Behind them, the 5 companions rode in a tight formation. Even Finian, usually the spark of every conversation, kept his voice low. The world around them was peaceful, birdsong, rustling leaves, distant farmhouses, but the seven felt none of it. Their minds were still on the blood-stained stones of Harrowfall, the return to the capital. As the capital came into view, the bells began to ring. Word had spread quickly, the kings had returned. People rushed to the gates, cheering, waving banners, calling out their names. But the seven did not enter triumphantly. They entered with bowed heads. The crowd's cheers softened as they saw the expressions on the faces of their kings and their 5 companions. Mothers pulled their children close. Elders removed their hats. Soldiers saluted with solemn respect. Aldrich dismounted first. Rowan followed. The 5 companions formed a protective line behind them as they walked through the gates. A young boy stepped forward, holding a small wooden carving of a knight. "My king, did you win?" Aldrich knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Yes," he said softly. "But victory has a cost." The boy nodded, sensing the weight in Aldrich's voice. Rowan placed a hand on Aldrich's back. "Come, the people need to hear the truth." The Hall of the Fallen. Inside the palace, the 7 gathered in the great hall. The 2 surviving knights from Harrowfall had been brought home earlier that morning, carried gently by villagers who had insisted on honoring them. The hall was quiet, lit only by tall candles. At the center stood a long table draped in blue cloth, with 48 silver tokens laid out, one for each knight who had fallen. Aldrich approached the table slowly. Rowan stood beside him. Cailan bowed his head. "They deserve more than this." Dorian's voice was tight. "They deserve everything." Garrick clenched his fists. "I should have protected them." Finian swallowed hard. "We all should have." Brennar stepped forward, placing a hand on the table. "We honor them by continuing the mission they died for." Aldrich closed his eyes. "We honor them by freeing the world," Rowan added, "and by ensuring no more families suffer under tyranny." The 7 stood in silence, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across the hall. The king's address. Later that evening, the people gathered in the courtyard. Torches lit the night, and the air hummed with anticipation. Aldrich stepped onto the balcony, Rowan beside him, the 5 companions standing behind them like pillars of strength. Aldrich raised his voice, steady but heavy with emotion. "People of the kingdom, we have returned from Harrowfall. The city is free, its people are safe." A cheer rose, but Aldrich lifted his hand, and the crowd fell silent. But freedom came at a cost. 48 brave knights gave their lives to protect the innocent. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mothers covered their mouths. Soldiers bowed their heads. Rowan stepped forward. "They fought with honor. They fought for justice, and they will be remembered for as long as this kingdom stands." Aldrich continued. "We carry their memory with us, and we will not let their sacrifice be in vain." Rowan's voice rose. "We will continue our mission. We will free every land still under tyranny. We will rebuild every city. We will protect every innocent life." The crowd erupted, not with cheers, but with a deep, unified vow of support. For the kings, for the 7, for the fallen, the quiet after. When the crowd dispersed, the 7 retreated to a private chamber overlooking the city. The night was calm, the stars bright. Rowan leaned on the balcony railing. "Do you think we're ready for what comes next?" Aldrich joined him. "We have to be." Finian flopped into a chair. "I'm ready for a nap." Garrick chuckled. "You're always ready for a nap." Dorian sat at the table, spreading out maps. "We need to plan our next move." Cailan nodded. "The world won't free itself." Brennar stood by the window, watching the city lights. "And there are still lands suffering." Aldrich turned to them. "Brothers, tomorrow we rest, but the day after we ride again." Rowan placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "Together," the 5 companions echoed softly. "Together." The 7 stood in the quiet chamber, the weight of the world on their shoulders, but the strength of brotherhood in their hearts. They had returned home, but their journey was far from over. Chapter 12. The Seven at the Fire. Night settled over the capital like a soft blanket, the stars bright and clear above the palace walls. The city was quiet now, the people fed, the wounded tended, the fallen honored. For the first time in weeks there was no shouting, no marching, no battle cries, just peace. Aldrich stood on a balcony overlooking the courtyard, watching the torches flicker below. Rowan joined him, carrying 2 cups of warm spiced tea. "You should rest," Rowan said, handing him a cup. Aldrich took it with a faint smile. "I will, but not yet." Rowan leaned on the railing. "You're thinking about them." Aldrich nodded. "The knights, the people we freed, the people still waiting." Rowan bumped his shoulder lightly. "Then let's think together." Aldrich chuckled softly. "You always know what to say." Rowan grinned. "I'm your brother. It's my job." Behind them, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Caelan appeared first, followed by Dorian, Garrick, Finian, and Brennar, each carrying food, blankets, or firewood. Finian lifted a basket. "We brought supplies," and by we, I mean Garrick carried everything heavy. Garrick shrugged. "You carried the bread." Finian puffed his chest. "Bread is important," Dorian muttered. "You ate half of it." Finian gasped. "I was hungry." Brennar smirked. "You're always hungry." Caelan cleared his throat. "We thought, perhaps tonight we should sit together, away from duty, away from grief." Aldrich nodded. "I would like that." Rowan smiled. "Then let's find a fire. The gathering." They walked to the palace gardens, a quiet place of stone paths, tall hedges, and a single ancient oak tree whose branches stretched wide like welcoming arms. Beneath the tree, Garrick built a fire while Finian arranged blankets in a circle. When the flames rose, warm and steady, the 7 sat around it. For a long moment, no one spoke. The crackling fire filled the silence, casting soft light across their faces. Rowan broke the quiet first. "We've been through much." Aldrich nodded. "And we will go through more." Caelan stared into the flames. "But tonight, we breathe." Dorian leaned back against the tree. "We need this." Garrick poked the fire with a stick. "We deserve this." Finian raised a piece of bread. "And we eat this," Brennar chuckled. "Of course you do. Stories in the firelight." Rowan looked around the circle. "Tell me something you've never said aloud." Finian's hand shot up. "I'll go first," Dorian groaned. "Of course you will." Finian cleared his throat dramatically. "I once tried to impress a girl by juggling knives. I dropped one. On my foot." Garrick laughed so hard he nearly fell over. "That explains a lot." Finian pointed at him. "Your turn." Garrick shrugged. "I once punched a tree because I thought it looked at me wrong." Caelan blinked. "Trees don't look at people." Garrick nodded. "I know that now." Rowan wiped tears of laughter from his eyes. "Dorian." Dorian sighed. "Fine. I once tried to write poetry." Finian gasped. "Read it." "No, please." "No." Brennar smirked. "I'd like to hear it." Dorian glared at him. "I burned it." Finian clutched his chest. "A tragedy." Aldrich smiled. Brennar poked the fire. "I used to be afraid of the dark." Finian blinked. "Really?" Brennar nodded. "My father told me stories of creatures that lived in shadows. Took me years to realize he made them up." Rowan nudged Aldrich. "Your turn." Aldrich hesitated. "I once tried to sneak out of the palace as a boy. I made it 3 steps before tripping over my own cloak." Finian burst out laughing. "The mighty king, defeated by fabric." Rowan grinned. "I remember that. You blamed the cloak. It betrayed me," Aldrich said. Rowan leaned back. "My turn then. When I was young, I wanted to be a farmer, not a warrior, not a king, just someone who grew things." Aldrich looked at him softly. "You still grow things. Just not crops." Rowan smiled. "Maybe." The fire crackled. The night deepened, and the 7 felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The oath renewed. As the fire burned low, Aldrich stood. "Brothers, tonight reminded me of something important." Rowan rose beside him. "That we are more than warriors." Aldrich nodded. "We are a family. And whatever comes next, whatever battles, whatever losses, whatever victories, we face them together." Caelan placed a hand over his heart. "Always," Dorian stood. "Until the world is free," Garrick rose. "And even after," Finian hopped up. "Especially after," Brennar nodded. "The 7 stand as one." Aldrich extended his hand. Rowan placed his atop it. One by one the others joined. 7 hands, 7 hearts, 7 shadows cast by the dying fire. Rowan whispered, "Tomorrow, we plan our next move." Aldrich added, "Tonight, we rest." The fire crackled softly as the 7 stood beneath the ancient oak, the stars watching silently overhead. For the first time in a long time, they felt whole. Chapter 13. Whispers of an Unfreed Land. The next morning dawned cool and quiet, the sky streaked with pale gold as the 7 gathered in the palace war room. Maps covered the long table, marked with inked circles, arrows and notes from their recent campaigns. The treasure they had brought home was secured deep within the palace vaults, guarded day and night. But today, the 7 were not thinking about gold. They were thinking about the world beyond their borders. Aldrich stood at the head of the table, hands braced against the wood. Rowan stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes scanning the maps. Calen, Dorian, Garrick, Finian and Brenna took their places around the table, each man carrying the weight of the last weeks on his shoulders. Aldrich spoke first. "We've freed Harrowfall, we've restored order to the capital, but the world is still broken." Rowan nodded. "And we've only just begun." Dorian tapped a region on the map, a wide stretch of land to the east, marked with jagged ink strokes. "This is where the whispers come from." Finian leaned forward. "Whispers? That sounds ominous." Brenna's voice was low. "It is. Rumors from the east." Calen unfolded a parchment. "Reports from travelers, merchants, refugees, all saying the same thing." Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Which is," Calen read aloud, "a land still under the rule of a tyrant, a land where the people are forbidden to speak freely, where soldiers patrol every road, where no one enters and no one leaves." Finian shivered. "That sounds awful." Garrick frowned. "Why haven't we heard of this before?" Dorian answered. "Because the tyrant controls information. He silences anyone who tries to speak of it." Aldrich's jaw tightened. "What is the name of this land?" Calen hesitated. "They call it the Eastern Reach." Rowan leaned over the map. "And this tyrant?" Brenna spoke quietly. "No one knows his name. They only call him the Warden." Finian blinked. "That's not creepy at all," Dorian added. "Some say he commands an army larger than any we've faced." Garrick cracked his knuckles. "Then we'll break it." Aldrich shook his head. "Not blindly. Not after Harrowfall." Rowan nodded. "We need information. Scouts, allies, a plan." Calen looked at the kings. "Then we ride east. The messenger." Before they could continue, a guard burst into the room, breathless. "My kings, a messenger has arrived. He claims to be from the Eastern Reach." The 7 exchanged glances. Aldrich nodded. "Bring him." Moments later, 2 guards escorted a thin, trembling man into the war room. His clothes were torn, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. Rowan stepped forward. "You're safe here. Speak freely." The man swallowed hard. "My kings, I bring warning." Aldrich's voice was steady. "Tell us." The man's hands shook. "The Warden knows of you. He knows of the 7. He knows you freed Harrowfall," Finian muttered. "How does everyone know everything about us?" the man continued, voice cracking. "He fears you. And because he fears you, he is preparing." Dorian leaned forward. "Preparing what?" The messenger's eyes filled with tears. "War." Silence fell over the room. Aldrich's expression hardened. "How many soldiers does he command?" The man shook his head. "More than you can imagine, and he has already begun marching west." Rowan stepped closer. "How far?" the messenger whispered. "A week, maybe less." Calen's hand tightened on the table. "We don't have time," Brenna murmured. "He's coming for us." Garrick growled. "Let him come." Aldrich raised a hand. "No, we will not be caught unprepared." Rowan nodded. "We meet him on our terms." "The decision." Aldrich turned to the 7. "Brothers, the world is calling us again," Rowan added, And this time the threat is greater than anything we've faced. Kalen placed his hand on the map. Then we ride east. Dorian nodded. We gather allies. Garrick cracked his knuckles. We train harder. Finian grinned nervously. We try not to die. Brennar looked toward the window where the sun was rising. And we listen to the whispers. They will guide us. Aldrich placed his hand in the center of the table. The circle of 7 rides again. Rowan placed his hand atop Aldrich's. For the world. One by one the others joined. Kalen for justice. Dorian for strategy. Garrick for strength. Finian for hope. Brennar for truth. 7 hands. 7 hearts. 7 shadows cast across the map of a world waiting to be freed. Aldrich whispered, "The warden thinks he knows us." Rowan's eyes hardened. He has no idea. The 7 stood tall, ready for the storm that was coming. The whispers had become a warning. And the warning had become a call to arms. Chapter 14. A symbol that should not exist. The morning after the messenger's warning, the 7 rode out from the capital with a small escort of scouts. The air was crisp, the sky a pale blue streaked with thin clouds. But beneath the calm surface, tension simmered. Aldrich rode at the front, Rowan beside him. The 5 companions followed close behind, each man alert, each hand never far from his weapon. They were heading east, toward the borderlands, toward the unknown. Rowan broke the silence first. "Do you think the messenger was telling the truth?" Aldrich nodded slowly. His fear was real. "And fear like that doesn't come from lies." Kalen added from behind them, "The Eastern Reach has been silent for years. Too silent." Finian shivered. "Silence is never good, especially when it comes from people who should be screaming." Garrick grunted. "Then we'll make them scream again." "With freedom," Dorian smirked. That was almost poetic. Garrick frowned. "I wasn't trying to be poetic." Brennar murmured, "Poetry or not, he's right. Something is wrong out here. The abandoned village." By midday, they reached a small village near the border, or what remained of it. The houses were intact, but the doors hung open. Tools lay scattered in the dirt. A cooking pot still sat over cold ashes. A child's wooden toy lay abandoned in the road. Rowan dismounted immediately. "No bodies." Aldrich nodded, which means they were taken. Kalen scanned the rooftops. No signs of struggle. Dorian crouched beside a set of footprints. They left in a hurry. Forced march, many feet. Men, women, children. Finian swallowed hard. "Where did they go?" Brennar pointed east. "That way." Aldrich's voice hardened. "The warden." Rowan clenched his fists. "We're too late." Kalen shook his head. "Not too late. Just late," Garrick growled. "Then we catch up." But before they could move on, Brennar froze. "Wait." He knelt beside a wooden post near the center of the village. Something was carved into it. Deep, deliberate, unmistakable. A symbol. Aldrich and Rowan approached. Rowan whispered, "What is that?" The symbol was a circle with 3 vertical lines inside it, like prison bars. Beneath it, a single word had been carved. "Warden." Finian stepped back. No, that symbol shouldn't be here." Dorian's voice was tight. "This far west? Impossible." Kalen shook his head. "Not impossible. Just terrifying." Garrick slammed his fist into his palm. "He's already in our lands." Aldrich stared at the symbol, jaw clenched. "He's marking territory," Rowan added, "and sending a message." Brennar stood slowly. "This village didn't fall. It surrendered." Finian blinked. "Why would they surrender?" Dorian answered quietly. "Because they were given no choice." The banner in the wind. As they searched the village, a sudden gust of wind lifted something from behind one of the houses, a scrap of cloth, tangled in a broken fence. Rowan pulled it free. It was a banner. Black cloth. The same symbol painted in stark white. The warden's mark. Aldrich's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is not a rumor. This is not a whisper." Rowan nodded. "This is a warning." Finian looked around nervously. "Do you feel that?" Garrick frowned. "Feel what?" Finian pointed at the trees. The quiet. It's too quiet. Brennar nodded. He's right. The forest is watching us. Kaelin drew his sword. We should leave. Now, Aldrich agreed. Mount up. We ride east. But cautiously, Rowan added, and we stay together. The shadow on the hill. As they left the village, Brennar suddenly halted his horse. Wait, the others followed his gaze. On a distant hill, barely visible through the haze, stood a lone figure, cloaked, motionless, watching. Aldrich narrowed his eyes. Who is that? Rowan whispered. A scout? Dorian shook his head. Too still. Finian shivered. Too creepy. Garrick reached for his hammer. Should I go introduce myself? No, Brennar said sharply. He wants us to see him. Kaelin's voice was low. A message. Aldrich stared at the figure. Then here is ours. He raised his sword high, the steel catching the sunlight. Rowan raised his beside him. The 5 companions followed. 7 blades, 7 hearts, 7 vows. The figure on the hill did not move. Then, slowly, he turned and disappeared over the ridge. Finian exhaled shakily. I hate that, Garrick muttered. I hate him, Dorian said. We need to move. Aldrich nodded. We ride. The warden knows we're coming. Rowan added. Good. The 7 rode east, the banner of the warden burning in Rowan's grip. The world was changing, the shadows were moving, and the 7 were riding straight into the heart of it. Chapter 15. The Journey, Yet Unfinished. The sun was sinking behind the western hills as the 7 rode back toward the capital, the warden's stolen banner tied to Rowan's saddle. Its black cloth fluttered in the wind like a shadow that refused to die. Aldrich rode in silence, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Rowan watched him from the corner of his eye, sensing the storm building inside his brother. Behind them, the 5 companions rode in a tight formation, Kaelin alert, Dorian thoughtful, Garrick tense, Finian unusually quiet, Brennar scanning every ridge and tree line. The world felt different now, heavier, darker, as if the warden's symbol had stained the air itself, the return to the capital. By the time they reached the gates, torches were being lit along the walls. The guards saluted, but their expressions shifted when they saw the banner Rowan carried. Aldrich dismounted first, summoned the council, and doubled the watch. The captain of the guard bowed. At once, my king. Rowan handed the banner to a soldier. Burn it, but remember it. The soldier nodded, swallowing hard. As the 7 entered the palace, whispers followed them like shadows. What is that symbol? Is it true? Is the warden coming here? Aldrich ignored them. Rowan did not. He turned to the people gathered in the courtyard. You are safe. We are here. And we will protect you. The crowd quieted, reassured by the calm strength in his voice. But the fear remained. The war room. Inside the war room, the 7 gathered around the map once more. The candles flickered, casting long shadows across the parchment. Aldrich placed the warden's banner on the table. Kaelin stared at it. He's marking territory, claiming land that isn't his, Dorian added, and he's closer than we thought. Garrick slammed his fist onto the table. Then we ride out and crush him. Finian shook his head. We can't just charge in, not against an army that size. Brennar spoke quietly. He wants us to rush. He wants us to act without thinking. Rowan nodded. Then we won't. Aldrich looked at each of them. We need allies, supplies, strategy, and time. Dorian pointed to the eastern border. We have a week, maybe less. Kaelin folded his arms. Then we prepare. Garrick cracked his knuckles. We train. Finian sighed. We don't die, Brennar murmured. We listen to the land. Rowan placed his hand on the map. And we stand together. Aldrich nodded. Always. A moment alone. Later that night, Aldrich stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the rooftops. Rowan joined him, leaning on the railing. You're thinking too loudly, Rowan said. Aldrich smirked. You always say that, because it's always true. Aldrich exhaled. The warden is unlike any enemy we've faced. He's organized, strategic, Ruthless? Rowan nodded. And afraid? Aldrich turned to him. Afraid? Rowan's voice was steady. He sent scouts into our lands. He marked villages. He's watching us. That means he fears what we can become. Aldrich considered this. Or he fears what we already are. Rowan smiled. Exactly. Aldrich looked out over the city. We'll need every strength we have. Rowan placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. Then it's a good thing we have 6. Aldrich laughed softly. You mean 5? No, Rowan said. 6. You forget to count yourself. Aldrich's smile faded into something deeper. Thank you, brother, always. The circle gathers. The 5 companions joined them on the balcony, each carrying a piece of the future. Kaelin with a list of potential allies, Dorian with new strategies, Garrick with training plans, Finian with scouting routes, Brennar with maps of the eastern terrain. Aldrich looked at them, at the men who had become more than warriors, more than friends. Rowan stepped forward. Brothers, the world is changing, the Warden is coming, and we will meet him. Aldrich raised his voice. But we will not meet him as kings alone. We will meet him as the 7. Kaelin placed his hand in the center of the circle. For justice. Dorian added his. For strategy. Garrick added his. For strength. Finian added his. For hope. Brennar added his. For truth. Rowan placed his hand atop theirs. For the people. Aldrich placed his last. For the world. 7 hands, 7 hearts. 7 shadows cast by the moonlight. The circle of 7 stood united, ready for the storm that was coming. The final line of Book 2. As the night deepened, Aldrich looked east, toward the lands they had yet to free, toward the enemy who had marked their world with fear. Rowan stood beside him, sword at his hip, resolve in his eyes. The Warden thinks he can break us, Rowan said. Aldrich shook his head. He doesn't understand. Rowan smiled. What doesn't he understand? Aldrich answered softly, fiercely. That we are unbreakable. The 7 turned toward the rising darkness and stepped forward into destiny.